This is Inner Healing Paths podcast. Here we discuss the healing of the mind, body, soul, and spirit through a variety of different paths. We have emotional and spiritually minded conversations centering on ancestral healing, psychology, astrology, yoga, meditation, magic, and indigenous spiritual practices of the world. I am your host, Rosa Shetty, and I am so happy you are here. Welcome. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to this episode. And today I sit down with Sandra Hinojosa Ludwig. She is a best-selling author of a book titled Chica, Why Not? How to Live with Intention and Manifest a Life That Loves You Back. During our conversation, Sandra shares about her personal journey of discovering the law of attraction, her intuitive gifts, and how this guided her in a journey of deeper self-acceptance and love. We also talked about our shared love for Abraham Hicks, and I just know that you're going to get so much out of this conversation. I hope it inspires you, especially as a new year is around the corner. I hope it inspires you to put some of these principles into practice and start manifesting everything that you want in your life. So if you enjoy this episode, don't forget to leave us a review. And without further ado, take a listen. Hi, Sandra. Thank you so much again for coming on to this podcast, Inner Healing Paths. Thank you for accepting the invitation. ¿Cómo estás?
Thank you for having me. Muy bien, gracias. ¿Y tú?
Bien, mucho gusto. Very nice to meet you. I know I have your book right here. I read your book and I loved it. I heard about you in another podcast actually. And this was like months ago when your book first came out and I ordered it and now here we are.
Oh, I'm so happy you liked it.
Yes, I loved it and I can't wait to get into it. But before we do that, just tell us a little bit about you, your journey, and just what brought you to this point, just so we can get to know a little bit more about you.
Yeah, so I was born and raised in Monterrey, Mexico. And, I finished university, got my first job in Mexico. And but I kept feeling inside of me that I just wasn't happy. There got to be something else, right? You do all the things people tell you, finish, school, get a job, and I still wasn't feeling happy. So, Dad took me to 5 different countries, always with the same thing. Things around me don't make me happy, so I just keep moving. And it worked out anyway. I had a pretty good 20-year corporate career that I really enjoyed. I ended up living in Germany, United States, England, and Canada. And now I live in Canada. But it was around 2006 that I'm like, okay, I've already moved enough, so it can't be what's outside of me. It has to be something else. And I think that was the moment when I touched one of the moments. There's been several moments in my life where I touched rock bottom, but that was one of them where I said, there gotta be something else. It can't be this. Like, I am so unhappy. I will cry out of the blue. And finally, I love how the universe, when you really surrender and just kind of go really quiet, it will show itself, right? It will show, through inspiration and other things. And that's how I started learning about the law of attraction. The first time I heard you can create your own reality, I was really intrigued by it because my reality sucked at the time. So I'm like, what? And that was the beginning of it. So 2006, so it was 15 years ago. I continued working in the corporate world until 2016, and I became a certified coach in 2015. And I started helping Latinas. And in 2018, I was able to put together a book proposal, sold it to Hay House. 2019 was, they bought my book, and just a few months ago, it came out to the world. So that is in a nutshell my journey.
Yes. Oh my goodness. And I mean, I'm sure there's a lot there that we can go into, but it just sounds like it was almost like the learning about the law of attraction. It just kind of started speeding up your process, your own, should we say like healing, your own
It,
journey in that regard?
and it was healing too, because at the around the same time that I found the law of attraction, I remember talking to one of my friends
Hmm.
saying, I don't know what's going on with me. Like I literally I'm washing dishes and I just break out crying. Like I wouldn't even know what it was. I would just like start crying. I was so unhappy in my life, and half the time I didn't even know what it was. So she actually told me to go to her therapist. So at the same time that I was doing all of that, I started therapy. And I think the two things together really helped me. The number one, it helped me be in my body so that I could be open to things happening around me, and me actually being in a place where I was regulated enough to say, okay, this is what I choose rather than reacting. So it was definitely a journey of healing. It is still a journey of healing. It's very much a still.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm one of, I believe that when it comes to healing, we're always on this journey. I don't think
Yeah.
we're at a point where we're just done and all healed. I think we're always improving. I think there's always room for improvement. And I think we're always going to be on this path, and we can't undo what we know. Once we're on this path and in motion, it just gets better and better. And it's definitely a journey, right? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so this podcast is called Inner Healing Paths, and that's because I do believe that there's so many paths that lead to healing. So can you tell us a little bit about, so when it comes to the law of attraction and finding that, how would you describe that path of healing, of connecting with the law of attraction? Um, how in what part of the law of attraction, I should say, was it healing for you, and in what way did it bring
Yeah.
that healing that in your life?
Yeah. See, the law of attraction, the way it works is that you have a desire, and then that desire is held by the universe at a high vibration. So for you to be able to manifest that into your life, you need to bring yourself to the same vibration of your desire. But a high vibration means that you're feeling good. And guess what? When you're carrying with things from the past, or and all of those things, it does not allow you to keep that energy at a high level. So it's an invitation, and I'll be honest, I first started the law of attraction because I just wanted things. I wanted the house, I wanted the job, I wanted the husband.
Yeah.
Because I kept thinking, if things outside me get better, then I will be happy. So I thought, if I get a job promotion, if I get the house, if I get the husband, I'll be happy. So that's how I started to do the law of attraction. And I started manifesting things into my life. Like within 5 years, I had all of that. I had the husband, I had the job, but then what I kept feeling was that I would create all of those things. I would be feeling amazing. And then something outside of me will happen and then knock me back down again. And then it would take me a while to get back up. And it was like that constantly. So finally I realized that, the way I describe the law of attraction now, for me, is about connection. It's about having this clear connection with yourself and with the divine part within yourself, which is the universe, right? So for that connection to be clear, to be crisp, to be full on, you really need to work on all of the things that prevent you from having that connection. And that can be past trauma, that can be, you know, limiting beliefs, that can be, cultural beliefs that you have, all of these things that prevent you from just really living in the moment, really be your authentic self, really be, authentically dream. I've had many times in my life, and working with other women, that, sometimes we don't even allow ourselves to dream because of the beliefs that we have of what is possible for us. So really is, for me now, the process of alignment is really understanding all of the things that are preventing that connection with myself and with spirit, and and then clear up all of those things, because I know as I start removing those things, my connection becomes clearer, becomes stronger. And when that happens, stuff manifests. But really, it starts with you having this beautiful connection with yourself and with spirit, and then everything else comes.
When you mentioned the word spirit and the mind, and I'm on, when it comes to healing, it's all about that body, mind, and spirit integration, right? And
Yeah.
bringing it all together. For you, when it comes to the emotional and the spiritual and the mental, when at what point did you feel like, okay, this path of connecting with the universe and the law of attraction and manifestation, at what point did you feel that it was like it was integrated, like you were able to clear some of those beliefs that you had been holding from, perhaps from, from your past? At what point did it feel like, okay, this is coming together for me? And
Yeah. So after the first 5 years, like I say, I was able to manifest a lot of things, and because I was keeping my energy high enough by isolating myself from the world. I only hang around with happy people, and I still do a lot of that. At the end of the day, it's my life, and you get to pick who you hang around with. But I, what happened is I had this experience where I moved from Canada to England. Completely different experience, completely different people, completely different job. I was in a really comfortable place where I was. I knew everybody in my job. I had been there for about 5 years by the time I started the law of attraction. I knew everybody in my job. I had a beautiful set of friends, support system around me. I knew the city. I was living in Toronto at the time. I knew Toronto really well. I was in my element. There was very little that could surprise me. Now I moved to a place where everything was a surprise, from the language to the food to the people to the culture to everything. And I happened also to move to a job that was really challenging for me. Challenging from a, you know, technical perspective. I'm a technical person, so technical leadership perspective, but it was also, I had to deal with so many unknowns to me, like the culture, the language. I think there was a little bit about me being Hispanic in a very white, male dominated space. All of that came together. And all of a sudden, I was not feeling as happy and as bubbly as I was. And it didn't take long. I would say it took about a year for me to completely lose my ground again and feel and then be back to that place where all of these beliefs started coming back, that I'm not good enough, maybe I don't deserve this job, maybe something's wrong with me, all of that. And it took me a while to realize, oh my God, I am back at that place. And I talk about it in the book. So before I left Toronto, my therapist told me, Sandra, do not ever let it get that bad. And I remember one day, I remember those words, don't ever let it get that bad. And I realized I had let it get that bad. And that was the moment that I realized that if I really, really, really wanted this strong connection with spirit, I was going to have to heal all of those things that I still have within me, that the moment something got stressful in my life will jump out again and say, see, I told you, you're not good enough. You don't deserve this. All of these beliefs that I had, that I kept them in check as long as I was in a comfortable environment. But the moment something got stressful, they came back up. And, now it's funny because I am now, that experience was in 2011 to 2013. So now I'm back, that was 8 years ago. And it's funny because every time life gets stressful and I hear those voices, I'm like, oh, there it is. Something is still kind of lurking around. It happened with the launch of the book. The book was coming out April 27, and in February, I started experiencing anxiety. So now I know that those stressful moments in life tend to be a good place for me to find those places where I still maybe need a little bit more love, a little bit more connection.
That's the thing with change, right? And I in my in my line of work as a therapist, that's when people that's what triggers are unresolved, and that's when we see people coming in for therapy, and it could be something good. It could be a good change, right? Like moving to, like, for you, you wanted this experience, you wanted to
Oh
move,
yeah,
you were looking, you were excited about that, and that's how it is. Change triggers can be very, because our nervous system um, is gets triggered, right? Our nervous system is responding to a new environment, and it has to adapt to that new environment, and that can be overwhelming, even when it's a good change. It's a good change in life or anything different. It could be very triggering, and it's an opportunity, right, to work on, like you said, it was for you, it became an opportunity, to work on some of the things that were still pending, right? Things that flared up and that still needed to be addressed at that point in your life. Yeah, and
yeah, and it
mhm.
is fun. You're right. Like I wanted that experience so much. I manifested that experience just like I manifested the book. Like I wanted those experiences so much, but it's still I was put in a situation that felt, like you say, overwhelming enough that these things jump up. Like when the book happened, I I started experiencing anxiety around February. I would wake up with anxiety, 2 a.m. in the morning, and in the book I talk about curiosity, which is like just kind of sit with it. What's happening? It took me a few days to realize that the story I was telling myself was you should be doing more, which is ridiculous. It's 2 in the morning. What should I be doing at 2 in the morning? But it was that again, that belief that you know things had to go okay. Things had to be perfect. I had to work hard. And if I wasn't working hard, then and if things failed, it was all gonna be my fault. And I just sent a lot of love to that part of me that was really feeling scared and overwhelmed and vulnerable. And I remember I made a promise to myself, I'm gonna do everything in my power. I wanna look back the day after the book launches and say, I did everything in my power, and that for me will be success. And sure enough, the day after I look back and I'm like, yeah. And to be honest, I've even things happened that I wasn't planning that get more pushed to my book still. So it actually exceeded expectations, but I was having this constant anxiety that it was like things are gonna fail and it's all gonna be your fault.
Yeah, I mean, it was. I mean, it sounds like it was such a huge labor of love for you, right? To do this, to do your book, and I'm sure it was, like you said, it was a dream and manifested. The so it was a lot in a short period of time, right? Which is
Yes.
what what tends to happen, when our system gets overwhelmed, when our nervous system gets overwhelmed. It's too much too soon. Even when it's too much of one good thing, it could be a lot for us to handle,
Yeah.
and our body is just trying to help us in that process. And that's what anxiety really is our body metabolizing all of these stress hormones that are happening, because it sounds like you were busy, putting this wonderful book together, and on this journey for the first time, right? And so yeah, it's understandable that it was a lot. It was a lot for you,
Yeah.
to a point where you were able to, you mentioned there was a part of me that was able to, that you were able to see, okay, there's that part that is doing this. Um and in how do you feel like that's the part that keeps coming up for you in different areas of your life, that same part that comes up?
I think so. I think so. I am so familiar with that part of me now because it's the same one that keeps jumping up. And it's usually around the same themes, right? It's usually around the I'm not good enough, or like, if you don't work hard enough, it's all going to be your fault. Or even like the being overwhelmed and feeling like I'm not supported, it's only up to me, right? I think it's the same part. And I think I've become friends with it now because I know when it shows up, I'm like, oh, there you are. I know. But, I was talking to someone recently that I said, in the past, anytime that part of me will show up, number one, it could hijack me for months, years. Now it hijacks me for a few weeks, a few days, sometimes even a few hours, right? It doesn't go to those months. Like what I did this time around, I kept working on the book, on the launch of the book. And then I kind of took a little bit of a break, July, and that was able to bring me back to completely back to myself. And I went back to therapy too, of course. But, you know, so I become really good friends with it so that I know now it's around. But like I was saying, I told someone recently, in the past I would let it drive the car. And now it's like, no, you don't drive the car or hold the map. You sit in the back in the back seat. I am driving the car. You don't get to say where we're going. So it's still whining and complaining in the back, but and I know I'm like, yeah, I know we're almost there, but it's no longer driving the car.
And thank you for sharing that with us, because that in and of itself, that process that you described, it's one of the hardest things to do, to be able to talk back to the part that is anxious. It could be any problem, right? But for you, this anxious part that just kicks in, for you to be able to talk back to it is a skill, it's a tool, right, that you have available to you. It's hard to do. It's hard to have that perspective to say, okay, I see you, not today. You're not going to do this today. You can sit in the back, in the back seat. That in and of itself is so powerful. It sounds simple, but it's very hard to do. And if you're able to do it, like what you described, is so powerful in the moment, to be able to get that perspective and to come back and to see it as yourself, as a person that you are, not the anxious part of you, not from that perspective, from the perspective of you, the strong, intelligent, and woman that you are, right? So it's such a
Thank
powerful tool, and thank you for sharing that. And your book goes through a lot of tools. That's one of the things that I really, really appreciate about your book. um, I think every chapter you're providing a tool, right? A tool, and it's interesting because it helps with manifestation, but these are also very uh, tools that are very much in alignment with cognitive behavioral therapy, which is it's very very common out there. People, are very familiar with this. A lot of your tools, you are worded, of course, worded differently in a different, and you have a very unique perspective. And I encourage everyone to get your book. But I saw how effective they are, because they reminded me of CBT, and it's so interesting that these same tools can actually help you manifest, what you want.
Yeah, because like I said, I posted a video today in my Instagram where I was describing alignment almost like a garden hose. And imagine that you open the tap, and that's the source is universe of this beautiful energy of well-being is always flowing into our experience, and the hose is like com- constantly delivering this stream of well-being. But sometimes the hose will get a kink or will get a tangle. So the job is not to open the tap even more or say, hey, send more water. No, the problem is in the kink or the tangle. So what I'm hoping in the book is to help people find the kink and the tangle. So I go through all of the steps and I say, here's where you can, when we talk about the law of attraction, usually we use the word resistance, which is here's where you find resistance to the well-being of the universe. So you can either be allowing it or resisting it. Allowing it is really just kind of let it flow into your experience. But then what we do, as we normally do, because that's what we do, is we resist it, right? And then, for example, in the step of clarity, which is, coming up with your desire, I say many times we introduce resistance by talking about what we don't want instead of what we want. I don't want to be sick. I don't want to be poor. Or by, on energy flows where attention goes. So if you are focusing on poor and disease, that is kind of like what you're putting your attention on. So you're resisting that well-being from the universe. Or if you focus on you say, yeah, I really want to be a millionaire, but that's not possible for me. That belief of I don't deserve $1 million, even though, yeah, not everyone has $1 million, but even just thinking I don't deserve this or I am not good enough to have $1 million is resistance again. Because at the end of the day, resistance, if I were to describe resistance, is whenever you disconnect from the person the universe knows you to be, which is this beautiful, powerful, capable creator. And when you doubt yourself, when you doubt whether or not you deserve, whether or not you're lovable, whether or not you can bring something, make something happen to you, you're disconnected from, you're introducing a kink and a tangle to that host. You're disconnected. And that's why we feel uncomfortable, because we know better. We know who we really are. And the moment we doubt who we are, we forget who we are. That's when we are resisting the well-being. And what I was hoping in the book was to help people identify all of those kinks and tangles that can happen in our houses, where we resist well-being by not believing this is possible for us. So we resist well-being by saying, well, I don't have all the steps, so everything has to be perfect. I talk about fear. Perfection, I believe, is a manifestation of fear. It's like, analysis paralysis kind of thing. Everything has to be perfect or it's not going to be good. Or we can resist it by just focusing on all the bad things in life, or resist it through fear, or, so it's what I was hoping by putting those tools in there was to help people understand the places where we can get stuck, when we can get stuck on not allowing that well-being into our experience.
So beautiful. Thank you for that message. And absolutely, I think you have an exercise that it's about peeling the onion, or it's like an onion
Yes.
exercise and kind of getting to the core, right? And that was so helpful because a lot of times what it looks like on the surface when we start peeling those layers, the onion, the exercise that there's is something completely different, right? It's following that
Oh,
thread.
yeah.
Yeah, and that's like you were talking about the blockages and the like the water hose example that you gave, and a lot of times the at the core is those that's what at the core, at the what's blocking our manifestation or our healing. Getting to that core is critical. I think it's everything, right? Especially if you're new at this manifestation work, people don't realize that you really do have to work on your stuff. You have to do
You
the,
do.
yeah. And that's from that point you can start seeing things happen for you, right?
Yeah. And that's another thing that I try to, I like to convey to people that alignment looks different for me than it looks for you. You know, when people talk about the law of attraction, and don't mind, this work, people talk about affirmations, people talk about vision boards, people talk about, you know, keeping your energy high by doing things that you love. And all of it can help you align. But my formula of alignment might be different from your formula of alignment. So that's again why connection is so important. What is your love language? What makes you be happy? Like a vision board does nothing for me. It really does nothing for me. But if you tell me visualization, oh my God, I really, really enjoy visualizing and dreaming. Like today I saw this thing on the internet and I'm like, wouldn't that be awesome if it happened to me? It was a picture that I saw. So you know what I did? I went in Canva and I changed the picture to make it about me. I know, it was just a way of me visualizing that desire coming into my experience. It makes me feel happy. It makes me focus my energy, and it makes me think, what if this could happen for me? What will it look like? So that actually works for me. But then again, my formula manifestation of alignment might be different from someone else's. So I always invite people, here's a lot of things that you could do. Find out what works for you. What is your alignment formula, if you will?
And I think your book does a really good job at giving us different ways of coming into that alignment. Through I think you have a lot of visualization exercises and then you have writing, some writing
Hmm.
exercises. And so and like you said, everyone's different, and the way we come into alignment is very different. So it's really, really important for us to know what works for us. What do we connect with, so we can get up on that same wavelength, right? Which is what's important for manifestation. There has to be a resonance. It has to be, whatever you want to attract has to be on the same wavelength as where you're at.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is where, the more I think about the law of attraction, the more I end up in this is really about connection. True, authentic, full on connection with who we are and with spirit, which I believe is the divine part inside of us.
Oh, that's so
So,
beautiful. Yeah, I love that. It's almost like a coming back to ourselves,
yes.
are at our deepest core, right? Who we are, what we were born as, right? Whole and perfect.
You know what they call it? Some indigenous cultures call this calling your spirit back. It's almost like your spirit lifts your body, and this I call it connection. I actually just finished a book called "Calling My Spirit Back," and that's what they call it: calling my spirit back, bringing it back into my body, into you know, into my present, into the now. I find that image so beautiful.
Yeah, and that reminds me of, I mean, that's the concept of susto. When I think in Mesoamerican traditions, susto is, a sudden something suddenly happens that scares you. It's a deep,
Yeah.
fright that you go through, and for that second or for whatever minute or however long, like your spirit leaves your body, right?
Yes.
And a lot of times it comes back, and a lot of times it doesn't, or a lot of times it's fragmented, right? Different parts. So I love that analogy. I think it's very,
You
very.
know, and it's funny because in Mexico, where I grew up, whenever you have a susto, one of the things they do is first they sit you down because your mind starts shaking. So they sit you down and they give you a piece of bread, which, so here you are, like something just happened. Let's say, for example, you barely missed the car, and you get all like shaky. So they put you in the floor and they give you a piece of bread. And I always think now, when I think back to that, it's almost like this piece of bread is a way to bring yourself back into your body, right? The chewing, the swallowing, the all of that. Because I don't know if a bread actually will do anything with your, maybe it's around your blood sugar, I don't know. But
Yeah,
I find it fascinating that
yeah.
that's the thing we do. We give them a piece of bread,
Is it sweet bread or just like any bread?
bolillo, which is like just a regular piece of bread, not sweet bread, just bolillo.
Yeah. How interesting. And I know my grandma, she used to give us, whenever we got scared or when we fell and we were like still like panicky, she would give us a little bit of sugar.
No,
And
it's
yeah, so that was para el susto, that was her thing. So it's so interesting. I mean, there's so many traditions, but it goes back to, in a way, doing, whether it's bread or sugar or just taking a few deep breaths. It's about grounding and just taking a moment to come back to your body, right? To feel your body through your senses or through your, food. And yeah, it's so interesting. Um, so I've been wanting to ask you, for, because a lot of our listeners, I've heard our story on this, but I know some listeners may not. So tell us, the process of writing your book, because I thought that story was such a cool story, and a prime example of manifestation. That you for you, right, that you manifested. So can you tell us a little bit about just how that in and of itself came to be, how you
yeah,
how it happened?
yeah. So and this, I think this is the story that you're referring to. So in 2015, I became a certified coach, and then I started helping women. And I was talking to one of my friends once, and I said, it seems like everyone falls in one of three categories, which is they don't know what they want, They know what they want, but they don't know how to get it. Or they know what they want, they know how to get it, but they just can't seem to get themselves to do it, right? And my friend was saying, well, why don't you write a book about it? I had never thought about a book. And I was like, maybe, I don't know. That was like 2 years before. And then I decided years ago that every year I would take a personal development class. So that year, 2018, I was looking for that class. What am I going to take this year? I actually make a big deal out of it because it's something that makes me really happy. So I'm like, okay, what am I going to do this year?
Awesome.
And and that year it was the writers' workshop of Hay House. Hay House was in Toronto. Hay House is the publisher that published a lot of the books that I follow, like Esther Hicks and Wayne Dyer and Louise Hay. So I've been to many of their events, and they were having the writers' workshop in Toronto. So I went to the writers' workshop, and that was the first. We talk about, is it possible for you? I don't know if I ever thought it was possible for me, but after that weekend, I remember thinking, I think it's possible for me. I think I could do this. And as with anything I said, I'm going to give 100%, and then I'm going to leave it out to the universe. If it is for me, it will happen. But now I was kind of liking the idea of writing a book, and I thought, if it doesn't happen this way, it might happen another way. But one of my favorite sayings is take one step towards the gods, and the gods will take 10 steps towards you. So I say, I'm going to do my first step and see what happens. So I wrote a book proposal. I ended up working with an editor, and I had an idea of the steps that I wanted to be in the book. I had 4 steps. So I say, okay, I need to figure out if these are the right steps. So by then I had a page. It was in Spanish at the beginning. So I put in the page, I'm going to be doing free coaching. Anyone that wants it. So in the summer of 2018, I ended up doing 35 one-on-one coaching sessions where I will, what do you want to work on? And during the session, I will walk people through the steps. And, I will finish the session and I will write in my notes all the things that came up during the session and put in an index. And eventually I realized it shouldn't be 4, it should be 6 steps. And I even changed the order a little bit. And then I'm like, but how am I going to do the exercises? Because, in a coaching session, you ask questions, you do things with them, but it's one-on-one. It's very easy to do it. How do you do that by yourself in your house? And like, for example, the onion exercise, how, it's very easy in a coaching session, asking questions to take them to the place where they discover, okay, this is what I'm thinking about right now. But how do you do that? So I came up with exercises. And again, I went on my page and I say, hey, everybody, I'm going to do free workshop sessions now. If anybody wants to sign up, I think I had about 60 people in 2 different workshops where I will teach the class and I will give them the exercises to take away. It was 4 weeks. And then, long story short, by the end of 2018, I had talked to over 100 Spanish-speaking Latinas.
Wow.
And that was the beginning of the book. And then they bought it in 2019, and that was it. I wrote the book in 2019 with all of the notes from those sessions.
Wow, that's amazing. And you also mentioned there was a contest.
Yes. So the way it was is at the end of the writers' workshop, you got to submit a proposal. Normally, Hay House and bigger publishing houses, you need to have an agent. And to get an agent, you need to have a pretty big audience and things like that. I didn't have that at the time, but or even now, but I didn't have it back then. And then they allow you to give a proposal without an agent, which is the only way you could submit a proposal to Hay House without an agent. And the way they did it is the top 3 proposals. The first prize was going to be a contract with Hay House. And then the second and the third prize was going to be self-publishing. They have a self-publishing house called Balboa Press. So it was going to be a self-publishing package. And I remember thinking, I'm going to do this. Like, this is going to happen. And I remember Balboa Press called me and said, because, they're trying to sell you the self-publishing packages. And they're like, maybe it would be great if you sign up for the self-publishing package. You can have your book like by next year. And I remember telling her, I'm waiting to hear if I won the contest, because if I won, I'm not going to need it. And I remember she was like, oh, okay, like, who says those things, right? Like, you
Yeah,
know, I'm waiting to hear if I won. And what do you know? I actually did win. I was
amazing.
I I had a meeting at work, and I was waiting for that meeting. So I went into the day of they were going to announce the winners. I went into a McDonald's, and I was sitting in the McDonald's getting a coffee, and then I look at my phone and I have a missed call, and I had a message. And I remember looking at the area code and thinking, oh my God, what is this? Instead of listening to the message, I go in Google to look at the area code, and it was California, where, hey, how's this? And I'm like, oh my God. So yeah, and then the message is like, Sandra, you won, give us a call back. That was awesome.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I mean, that's true manifestation at its
It
best.
was, it was.
Manifestation, and also I think it was a calling that you felt, and that you had, and you followed that path, and one thing led to another, like you said, one step at a time, and you did the work, which I think is important to point out, right? A lot of times I think the misconception is that we're just going to visualize our way into success, and whatever that is for you, or whatever stuff you want to acquire. But it does take some, we have to put in the work, right? Whether it's
Yeah.
clear our emotional blockages, whether it's actual work, like for you, right, putting these groups together, writing it, it takes, you have to do your part. Right, and
Yeah, actually, in the original 4 steps that I had at the beginning, I didn't have the step of commitment, which is action, and I didn't have the step of continuity, which is constant awareness. So I ended up adding those 2 steps. And the reason I added the step of commitment, I remember in a one-on-one session, I'm talking to someone, and she tells me this beautiful dream. And I'm like, oh my God, that's amazing. So what are you doing to manifest it? She's like, yeah, visualizing and praying. I'm like, yeah, no, but what are you doing what are you doing? She's like, no, I'm just visualizing. I'm like, no, you need to put the work. And I call it aligned action, which means, it's action that feels good, it's action that actually gets you excited. And the thing is, the more I do this work as well, I realize that many times clarity needs action, because you might think you want to, let's say, for example, you might think you want to be a lawyer, but it's not until you start studying law that you realize, actually, I'd rather be a policewoman. You know, sometimes you need action for clarity. Action also brings you inspiration, because through action, you might actually, I went to the writer's workshop, and I realized I have to have an editor. And then I started talking to, again, it's funny because in the first workshop I ever did with Esther Hicks, I met this woman in Toronto who happens to work in the publishing industry. So I reached out to her, and she's the one that recommended the editor that ended up helping me. But again, I had to take the steps, and it was through the step that I realized I need an editor. Like, sometimes action is
absolutely.
so much a part of the manifestation process. It is so needed. Without action, you're not manifesting, you're just wishing. And it's just different from manifesting.
Yeah, and I think when you take that action, that committed action, it shows the universe that you're serious. That it shows that
Yes.
you really want it, I think it's just easier to come into alignment with your desire when you show that commitment, right? Um,
Yes. And I say, when you talk about energy, the biggest energy there is in the universe is action. That is the biggest energy. That's why I realized that step needed to be in the book.
yeah, no, absolutely. I think that is are critical, and that chapter for me was very helpful uh, to clarify that I do have a part in this. I'm not just receiving here. I also have to give. And give through my actions, right? Show the
Yeah.
universe that what that what I'm committed, and setting that intention in motion, I should say. You set your intention, and you set it set the motion of it, which is, I think, it's critical, because one step will lead to another, and eventually you will, hopefully, if you continue working on whatever it is that you're trying to manifest, it will come to fruition. But there is a huge part that we have control, and that's our action.
Yes, absolutely. And like I say, action brings in so much. It brings clarity, it brings inspiration. And even if that's another thing that I mentioned in the book, which is when you connect with your desire, what you want, focus on your why you want it. Because sometimes the universe might come back and say, I know you're asking for this, but that might not be in your highest good. So let me show you all of these other things that will be in your highest good. One example is, I know when I was younger, I'd be like, but I want Juan to date me, and Juan's not even paying attention to me. And it turns out that actually it was the greatest thing that ever happened, because now, I end up in a different relationship that makes me even happier than I could have ever been with Juan. So it's almost a little bit trusting that things are going to work out for your highest good. They are always working out for your highest good. And it's just you showing up to them with an open mind that this is going to work out. Now, sometimes it's hard to see it when bad things happen in our life, or things that we consider bad happens in our life, undesirable things. You're like, how can this be for my highest good? And I get it. It is hard when something happens. I mean, through COVID, I think so many people have been through so much, for example. And the only thing I can say is just stay with it and love yourself through it. If it is something really undesirable happening in your life, just find ways to love yourself through it, and know that the universe will meet you wherever you are. Even if whatever is happening is highly undesirable, just know that the universe is there, even if it doesn't feel like it. Look for that trickle of well-being is still happening in your life, even in the midst of crazy, because there will be something.
Absolutely. That reminds me of a saying. I don't know where I heard it, but to shift our perspective, that this is happening for me, not to me. So things are happening for me, for my journey, for my greatest good. Even though we don't see it yet, even though we don't see how this could possibly help in our life, but we see it that as happening for me. It can shift that our mindset of feeling like a victim in this whatever circumstance you're in. Things are happening to me, instead of for you, for me.
One big shift that I had in regards to that was I read the book called Loving What Is by Byron Katie. And I realized that many times when things were happening to my experience that were undesirable, or something I didn't desire in my experience, um, a lot of the stress and suffering that I will experience came from actually wishing that it hadn't happened. And when I allow myself to notice that it happened, it allows me to grieve. It allows me to come to terms with this new situation that happened in my life. And then once that happens, the pain is still there. It is there because the situation that happened is still very real. But it allows me to come to terms with it in my own way at my own pace. And eventually, I always say, when you feel the ground under your feet once again, then ask yourself, from that new reality that you're in, what is my next best step. I talk about it in the book, my next best step. So whatever happened, sometimes accepting that it happened, not saying, oh my God, it's so amazing that it happened, but just accepting that it happened opens the door for healing, like you call it, right? Like just grieving, coming to terms with it. And eventually, when you feel that you can, ask yourself, what is my next best step now?
Yeah, what comes to mind is the concept of just surrendering to
Yeah,
what is, and acceptance and surrender. I think it's a process. It's definitely a journey in and of itself, but it is. I think part of healing is surrendering to the, the to what the moment is bringing up for us, or what the situation is, and in that surrender we let go of our need to control it, of our need have to have the outcome be a specific way. And
yeah,
I think you mentioned earlier Esther Hicks, and I also I read a lot of her books, and I think she calls it going going downstream versus
yeah,
upstream, right? It's just going with the flow of the flow of what is presenting to you in that moment, instead of fighting it, instead of
yes.
the resistance, right? It's just being in a place of allowance and surrender. And sometimes that's all we can do, right? Is just surrender to the
You know,
situation.
when I chose the title of the book, um, I put a life that loves you back because we many people talk about how to create a life you love, and I wanted to talk about a life that loves you back because a life that loves you back feels almost like allowing yourself to be loved, allowing yourself to be supported, allowing yourself, it's allowing, which is that feeling of going downstream, which is like everything you want. And by the way, I can tell because you say downstream, I can tell you've been listening to Esther Hicks for a while because she used to talk about that years ago. And now she talks more about the vortex. She talks about going in the vortex, but she used to describe the law of attraction as this downstream, letting go of the oars, she used to say, when you're going on your boat, let go of the paddles, let go of the oar.
Yeah, that's a
And
classic example. Yeah.
yeah, and I just get this feeling of ease that comes with this, right? It's almost like it's that feeling of surrendering, which is like, yeah, just let it happen. And that's why I chose um, a life that loves you back, because to me, it's almost that feeling of just allow life to love you. That's what life does. Life loves us. I just posted something too recently where I said, the universe wants that dream for you as much as you want it for yourself. And I truly, truly believe that. Sometimes we're like, oh, I just hope the universe gives it to me. Girl, the universe is over there already waiting for you. It's like when you go on a trip and, the one that is the keenest is already in the car, like, come on, why is everybody taking so long? That's the universe. The universe is already in the car, all packed up, ready to go. You're the one who's still wondering whether or not you have enough water for the road. No, it is, he wants it for you so much, as much as you want it for yourself.
That's so beautiful. And I love that, life that loves you back. I like to see it as life, capital L. You know, life loves you, right? And
It
life
does.
wants the best for you. And sometimes we are the ones getting in our own way, whether because of our mindset, our trauma. But a lot of times we get in our way, and if we're able to tap into uh, this resource, right, that we have accessible to us always, and at any time, we can start seeing these changes happening little by little,
Yeah.
because it is a journey. But the more we work on this, the more change and shifts and transformation that can happen. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a journey, like you said. I remember a couple of years ago, I heard this interview. Well, it's more than a couple of years ago, but I heard this interview with Louise Hay. It was probably a couple of years before she passed away. And it was Robert Holden talking to Louise Hay. And he asked her, do you ever still get those thoughts, that hijack you? And she said, yeah, I still do. I still get I'm not good enough, for example. She said, but now, similar to what I was saying earlier in my case, she said, it takes hours, when before it used to take days, weeks, months, right, to get over them. So, like you said at the beginning, this is a journey and things will continue to pop up, but that's fine. That's fine because eventually, Abraham Hicks says, when you have 99 good things in your life and you focus on the one bad thing, everything else turns bad. But when you have 99 bad things and you focus on the one good thing, everything else turns good. So again, it's finding that little sliver of well-being that's in your life. There is some, because the universe will never leave you in a place where there's absolutely no well-being. Even if you are breathing, even if you are, have a roof over your head, there is something that the universe is showing in your experience to tell you, here's how I'm loving you today. And just recognizing that and focusing on that will allow you to open yourself to many other ways in which the universe wants to love you.
Absolutely. Well, Sandra, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us today. And tell us a little bit of how, for those that want to get to know you better and get to know your work and purchase your book, can you tell us a little bit more how they can find you?
Yeah, so they can find me on Instagram, Facebook. Is Sandra Hinojosa Ludwig. And my book, Chica, Why Not? How to Live with Intention and Manifest a Life That Loves You Back, is for sale anywhere where books are sold.
Wonderful. Well,
and thank you for having me. Thank you for sharing your space with me.
Of course. Thank you for coming on. And you're welcome anytime. I love talking about this. We can talk about it forever. Okay, Sandra. Have a good night.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope that you found it healing and nourishing to your mind and soul. If there's a friend that you think would benefit from listening to this information, please share it. Share about our podcast. If you feel called to, please leave us a review, as this really helps boost our presence here in Apple Podcasts, and it makes it easier for others to find us. To stay up to date on new episode releases and special events and projects that I'm working on, you can follow us on Instagram at Inner Healing Paths Podcast. And you can subscribe to my newsletter by going to my website, which is rosashettylcsw.com. And I will include this information and links in the show notes. Once again, thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to sharing with you again next time.